Once upon a time, in the small village of Moja, there lived a hardworking man named Okoro. Okoro was a serial entrepreneur who worked as a farmer, trader, and carpenter. In fact, in the village of Moja, Okoro was popularly known as Jack of all trades and the master of all. Even though Okoro was skilled in many things, people could rely on him to deliver whatever they wanted. Because of his ability to do many things from a young age, Okoro was one of the richest men in Moja village. Like every other rich man in Moja, beautiful women flocked around Okoro, and some would even fight over him. In fact, some greedy mothers did not mind taking their young daughters to Okoro just so they could benefit from his riches. Sadly, even though Okoro knew that most women were only with him because of his wealth, he didn't mind. In Moja village, there was a beautiful girl named Assa. Assa was a light-skinned girl with curly afro hair, and she was well endowed. Like the other young girls, Assa only loved Okoro because of his money and the expensive gifts she usually received from him, and Okoro knew this. However, despite knowing that Assa was a gold digger, Okoro still married her, claiming that it was a man's responsibility to take care of a woman and he could satisfy Assa and take care of all her needs. 2 years after Assa and Okoro married, Assa gave birth to a bouncing baby boy and they named him Steve. With Steve in the picture, Okoro continued to work hard and even began looking for opportunities outside of Moja village. 3 years after Steve was born, luck shone on Okoro. One of his childhood friends who lived in Lagos City gave Okoro a multi-million contract to supply furniture to his new company, and Okoro delivered. Luckily for Okoro, once he successfully delivered on his friend's contract, another opportunity came. This time around, it was bigger, and this led to Okoro relocating to Lagos with his family. In Lagos, Okoro opened a big carpentry and furniture workshop with the profit he had made from the contracts, and his business bloomed. On the other hand, Okoro's wife Assa refused to do business after relocating to Lagos. All she cared about was shopping, making new rich friends, and spending her husband's money. Babe, to be honest, I am not happy with you. Why are you so stubborn? I have discussed this with you several times, but you won't listen, Okoro said to Assa one evening while they were in bed. Babe, if you're about to talk about me working or doing a business, don't even start. Assa growled. But wouldn't you like it if you could make your own money? I'm not telling you to work and give me your money. I can never do such a thing. I just want you to be your own independent woman. I'm not saying that I will stop taking care of you and our son. I just want you to have something going on for you, Okoro said. I have said no, and I will say no again. Is it a crime for a woman to enjoy her husband's money? It would have been different if you weren't doing well financially. So what is it? This thing is simple. You bring the money home, and I will take care of the family. Please don't complicate it, Assa said. What will happen to us if I lose everything tomorrow? What will we do? I have friends who are doing well, and their wives are working too, Okoro said. Okoro, don't make me angry this evening, no. I am warning you. If I talk now, they will say I have disrespected my husband. And God forbid, nothing will happen to your business. The God that brought you to this level will continue to sustain us, Okoro. I don't want to have this conversation again. Let things just remain the way they are, she added. After Assa said that, Okoro stopped bugging her to start a business. He just focused on working hard and taking care of his family. For years, Okoro single-handedly took care of Assa and their son Steve. He enrolled Steve in one of the best schools in Lagos and ensured that Steve did not lack anything. Being his only child, Okoro had a very good relationship with Steve. On the days he was home and had nothing to do at his workshop, Okoro would spend the whole day playing video games with Steve. Then on weekends, he would take Steve to his workshop to teach him a thing or two about carpentry. While Okoro, Assa and Steve were living their best lives. They had no idea that their lives were about to turn upside down in one night. One night, while Okoro and his workers were working on various pieces of furniture he was supposed to deliver later that week, something heart-wrenching happened. One of Okoro's workers forgot to turn off an electrical appliance and closed the workshop. Over the night, this electrical appliance had a malfunction and it caused a fire. Since there was no one to put off the fire, the workshop burned to the ground, and all the furniture Okoro and his team were working on burned to ashes too. The following morning, when Okoro went to his shop and saw what had happened, he suffered a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital immediately. A few days after Okoro recovered, he was forced to refund his contractors the money they had paid him for the pieces of furniture that were burnt. Since the money rolled into millions of naira and Okoro had already spent most of it buying the materials for the furniture, he was forced to take a loan to help in repayment.
Do you now see why I had been begging you to work? If you had something you were doing, would our lives be this miserable?
Okoro said to Assa, who was yelling at him to give her money for food one morning.
That one is your business. Is it my fault that your shop burnt down and you had to take a loan? Please do not tell me that. All I'm saying is that you should give me money to go to the market.
Assa said.
Assa, I cannot believe that you are saying this. So after everything I have done for you and our son, this is what I get in return. You can't even use your own money to buy food for us. Will you say that I haven't been giving you money for upkeep? You were supposed to travel to Dubai before this happened to us. What about that money?
Okoro asked.
That's none of your business. I don't ask you what you do with your money, so don't ask me what I do with mine. Now, let me ask you one question. If I use my money to cook food for you, what kind of man does that make you?
Assa yelled at him. While Assa was yelling at Okoro, she didn't mind if their son Steve was listening or watching her. That day, Okoro believed that Assa was frustrated by the rough times, and that was why she spoke to him in that tone. But he was very wrong. That was just the beginning of the insults from Assa. At the slightest provocation, Assa would yell at Okoro and call him names. She would even go as far as calling him names such as useless man, and this really broke Okoro's heart. Since Okoro was deeply in debt, he didn't even have the money to resurrect his business to its former standard. He even had to let go of all his workers and do all the work himself. If at all Okoro made money, he would focus on paying off his debts before anything else. For nearly 1 year, Okoro gave very little money to the house, and he focused on paying off the loan. Luckily for him, he had some good friends who helped him whenever they could, so he paid off the loan faster. In the 1 year Okoro struggled financially, he literally watched Assa turn into a totally different person. Aside from regularly insulting Okoro and starving him whenever she felt like it, Assa began to keep late nights, hang out with the wrong women, and even began to cheat on her husband. Even though Okoro suspected that Assa was cheating on him, he couldn't do anything because he still loved her despite her nasty attitude. For example, if Assa returned home late at night and Okoro asked her about her whereabouts, she would take offense immediately and turn the question into a fight. In the end, Okoro would end up apologizing just for peace to reign between them. He continued to endure and tolerate Assa until she did something very heartbreaking. One evening, Assa returned home in a man's car. Knowing that her husband, Okoro, would be at home, she deliberately told the man to park in front of their compound, and then she went inside their house and began to pack her bags.
Assa, who is that man? And where are you coming from?
Okoro asked as he followed Assa into their bedroom.
That man is my new husband, and I am moving in with him,
Assa said as she packed her clothes into her box.
I don't understand. What do you mean by he is your new husband? What am I to you? Are we no longer married?
Okoro asked in a confused tone.
You are really a shameless man, oh. So, you call this marriage?
Look, I was only staying with you until I could find a man who would take care of my needs, Assa said.
Assa, please do not do this to me. You are the wife of my youth and the only woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. If you leave me, who will take care of our son? Remember, I took good care of you when things were okay. Please, don't leave.
Okoro begged Assa.
Steve is also your son. I'm sure you can take care of him. No one is saying you didn't take care of me. I cannot continue to suffer with you just because you did things for me in the past.
Assa said.
Mommy, where are you going to?
Steve asked when he heard the argument between his parents.
That's none of your business. For now, your father will take care of you, okay? Be a good boy.
Assa said as she rolled her box out of the house.
Assa, please don't do this. You are all I have.
Okoro said as he tried to hold Assa's hand, but Assa aggressively pushed him and left. Days after Assa left, Okoro fell into depression. He could not believe that the same woman whom he labored day and night to provide for could leave him just because of a rough time. The only reason Okoro did not let his emotions overwhelm him was because of his son, Steve. He could not watch his little boy drink Gary day and night, so he was forced to take action. Instead of waiting at his workshop for customers to come to him, Okoro began to go to companies he knew would need his service, and in less than 3 months of running around, he got his breakthrough contract. The contract allowed him to pay off all his debts, and he had some money left after he delivered the furniture. With the profit made, Okoro decided to go back to trading, and he opened a fabric shop. In less than a year of combining carpentry and his fabric business, Okoro's life improved greatly, and he was able to restore his workshop to its former glory. About 6 months after Okoro returned to his former life, he met a woman named Rose. Rose was a young woman in her early 30s who worked as a banker in a well-known bank. Even though a part of Okoro still loved his first wife, Assa, he had to marry another woman so she could help him take care of Steve. Rose and Okoro ended up dating for 1 year and some months before they got married. After Rose and Okoro officially got married, Rose moved in with Okoro. In the first few months, Rose pretended to love Steve and showered him with so much love. But as time passed, she began to show her true colors. She would punish Steve for the smallest offenses, and she would even starve him on some nights and then threaten him not to tell his father. About 2 years after their marriage, Okoro found out what Rose had been doing to Steve, and he was forced to send Steve to a boarding school. About a year after Steve left for the boarding school, Okoro found out something shocking. His new wife, Rose, whom he loved so much, was having an affair behind him, and sometimes she would bring her lover home whenever he was at the workshop. Heartbroken by this bitter reality, Okoro divorced Rose and they went their separate ways. When Okoro divorced Rose, he was forced to bring back Steve from his boarding school, and he explained everything to him. Even though Steve hated that his father had taken Rose's side and not his, he still forgave his father, and they made up for their lost time. To ensure that no woman would maltreat Steve again, Okoro promised that he wouldn't marry any other woman until Steve was an adult. As the years passed, Steve watched as his father entered different relationships with different types of women, but he never committed to any of them. In fact, he learned the hard way that most of the women who flocked around his father only did that because of the money and other benefits they could get. Also, he saw that all the women would disappear each time it seemed like his father was having a financial situation. So as a young adult, Steve decided that he would never get married to any woman because he had convinced himself that there was no true love and the only thing women were after was a man's money. After Steve completed his secondary school education in Nigeria, Okoro, his father, sent him to continue his university education abroad. It had always been Okoro's dream to send Steve abroad, and when the opportunity came, he took advantage of it. For 5 years, Steve schooled abroad and he took his studies seriously until he graduated. However, Okoro had expected that Steve would continue living abroad after his studies, but he was wrong.
Dad, I have stayed here for 5 years, and if I leave here 1 more year, I might lose my sanity,
Steve told Okoro over the phone.
My son, I understand you have never loved the US, but if you stay there, you have more opportunities than you would have here in Nigeria. Why don't you reconsider your decision?
Okoro said.
Dad, I'm sorry, but I have already made up my mind. Nigeria is where I want to be. I know what I can bring to the table if I come back to Nigeria.
Steve insisted.
So, if you return now, where will you work? Some companies might refuse to hire you because they might think you are overqualified.
Okoro said.
I intend to work for you, Dad, and no one else. You have a big company I can leverage, and in no time, we'll be making international sales. It's time for you to start stretching out of Africa, Dad, and I can help you make that happen.
Steve said.
That doesn't sound bad at all. Well, this is your life and you know what's best for you. If you really want to return to Nigeria, then I cannot stop you. I just hope that you are making the right decision.
Okoro said.
Yes, I am, Dad. Now that we have settled that, I will be back next week. I wanted us to agree first before purchasing my tickets back home,
Steve said.
No problem, my boy. I'll be expecting you soon,
Okoro said before he hung up. The following week, just as Steve had promised, he returned home to Nigeria and Okoro was very excited to see him.
Hey, you have turned into a man. Hey, after you settle down, the next thing is for you to find a beautiful woman and make her my daughter-in-law.
Okoro teased Steve.
That reminds me, you never introduced me to any woman while you were there. Don't you love women? Please, tell me you love women.
He added.
Of course, I love women. Why would you even think that?
Steve asked.
I'm only asking. For a moment, I was worried those US people had influenced you.
Okoro said.
I love women, Dad. And if I ever meet the right one, you will be the first to know,
Steve said.
Please, don't wait for too long. You know I'm not getting any younger,
Okoro said.
Like I said, Dad, when the time is right,
Steve said. Even though Steve had promised his father that he would bring a woman in the future, Steve had no intentions of getting married or even dating. While schooling in the US, he tried dating 2 women, but the relationships ended badly because in the end, Steve realized that all the women wanted one thing, his money. A few weeks after Steve settled down in Nigeria, he began to look into his father's company, and in less than 5 months of returning, they got their first international deal. The deal was so huge that even Okoro did not believe it until the company paid for the furniture. After that first deal, Steve continued to land more international deals and their net worth increased significantly in no time. Even Steve, who barely had any money when he returned home, became a multi-millionaire in less than a year after his return. 2 years after Steve returned home, Okoro began to bug him about not being in a relationship.
Hey, Steve, my boy. Should I be bothered that I have not seen you with any woman other than our employees since you returned home?
Okoro said while he was having dinner with Steve one evening.
Dad, right now, my head is in our company and how to bag more international contracts. I do not want any distraction from women,
Steve said.
But you are growing older and you need a beautiful woman by your side. Don't you know that 2 heads are better than 1?
Okoro said. That's why there are two of us, Dad, Steve answered.
No, don't get it twisted. I'm not talking about the two of us. You need to get a woman. You are a young, handsome man, and women will die to be with you. Why are you hesitating?
Okoro asked.
Dad, like I told you before, if I ever meet somebody, you will be the first to know. Besides, I don't want to be pressured into marrying any woman when I'm not ready,
Steve said.
I have heard you, but I'm not talking about marriage. You need a woman to keep you warm at night. I know you are a man, and you have needs. Anyways, not to pressure you. Do what you think is best for you.
Okoro said. That evening, after having dinner with his father, Steve thought about everything his father had said, and he had an idea. Instead of going through the stress of dating a girl who would only date him because of his money, Steve thought of using the services of a prostitute. Around 11 p.m. that evening, Steve drove to a popular street in Lagos where he was sure he would find different kinds of prostitutes, and he picked one of them.
How much for a night?
Steve asked as soon as he pulled over in front of the girl he liked.
20,000 naira. Fine boy,
the girl said while chewing her gum aggressively.
Will you stay with me overnight?
Steve asked.
If you want to make her stay with you overnight, you go add 20k, my oga.
The girl smiled.
All right, hop in,
Steve said as he opened the passenger door for her.
Oga, you not talk anything about the money, oh? No be say when tomorrow come now, me and you go begin fight, eh?
The prostitute said.
I have agreed to your price, so you do not have anything to worry about,
Steve said.
Can we go now?
He added.
We dey go your house, abi we dey go hotel?
The prostitute asked. Before Steve picked up the prostitute, he never thought of where he would take her, but immediately the girl mentioned a hotel, he preferred the option of taking her to a hotel instead of his father's house. Since there were many hotels around him, Steve took the prostitute to a decent hotel and they had sex that night. By morning, Steve paid the girl the 40,000 naira they had agreed on, and he even added some money for her transportation. Initially, when Steve slept with the prostitute that night, he didn't think that he would go back there to try different girls, but he did. Almost every night, Steve would go out to pick a prostitute and he would take them to the hotel of his choice. It even reached the point where most of the prostitutes recognized him and some of the regular hotel staff knew him. This continued for a while, and after almost 2 years of consistently sleeping with different women, Steve's father, Okoro, began to beg Steve to settle down with a woman.
Steve, I do not think I can stay quiet anymore concerning this matter. If I was acting like you, do you think your mother and I would have given birth to you?
Okoro said.
But Dad, no more buts. I have had enough of your excuses. You are my only child, and I will not watch you play with your youth. Do you want to have your first child when you are 50, so the child might mistake you for his grandfather when you are his father?
Okoro yelled.
Dad, you don't have to raise your voice. It has not gotten to that.
Steve grumbled.
Oh yes, it has. I have allowed you to play around with women, but that time is up. You have everything at your disposal. You are good looking, you have money, and you have me. What else do you want?
Okoro yelled.
Okay, Dad. I have heard. Just give me a little more time and I will let you know,
Steve said.
Listen to me. You have 3 months, or else you will not like my actions. You're almost 40, yet you still act like a foolish teenage boy,
Okoro said before walking out on Steve. Even though Steve knew his father could get angry at times, that was the first time he saw his dad so mad. However, despite his father's anger, Steve continued to live his wayward life until the 3rd month began to approach. Unsure of what his father would do if he didn't bring a woman home, Steve began to panic. Already, his father had been reminding him of the 3-month deadline, so Steve knew that his father was serious. One day, while Steve was driving through a popular street in Lagos, he spotted a beggar who was sitting by a supermarket entrance. The beggar was a young girl in her late 20s, but she was tatteredly dressed and she kept begging passers-by for money. Immediately, Steve looked at the beggar girl twice. An idea struck him. "No, Steve, do not even think about it," Steve soliloquized. But almost immediately, he parked his car on the other side of the road and crossed to the beggar girl. "Good afternoon. How are you?" Steve greeted the girl.
Good afternoon, sir. Please help me. Nothing is too small. I have 3 sisters to feed and a sick father,
the beggar girl said.
I know this is very awkward, but I would love to discuss something with you in my car. It's something that will benefit you and me, and I know you need the money,
Steve said.
I know your type. You people have come again, but my God is bigger than yours. I refuse to fall for your trap. I cover myself with the blood of Jesus.
The beggar girl screamed.
"What is wrong? Why are you screaming? Please stop. You are drawing the wrong attention to us,"
Steve said as he tried to pacify the girl.
Kidnapper! Kidnapper! He wants to lure me to his car, but that will not work!
The girl yelled.
"Me? A kidnapper? No, please. You are mistaken. I just saw you here and I thought you might need the 3 million naira I want to offer you for a deal,"
Steve said.
Eh? 3 million naira?
The beggar girl asked in shock.
Do you want me to kill someone for you?
She whispered.
"No, of course not. I'm glad you are calm now. That's why I said you should follow me to my car. That's the appropriate place we can discuss this,"
Steve said.
You dey sure say you no go kidnap me?
The girl asked in a small voice.
"No, please. If you are not comfortable with coming with me, you don't have to,"
Steve said.
No! I will come with you. I dey craze to hear 3 million naira and I no follow you.
The girl said as she stood up from the ground she sat on. Without wasting time, Steve led the girl to his car and he introduced himself properly.
"My name is Steve. What's your name?"
Steve asked the girl.
My name is Sandra,
the girl answered.
"Okay, Sandra. It's nice to meet you. I was about to enter that supermarket when I saw you there, and immediately I had an idea. I have a father who has been bothering me to introduce him to a girl, and I would love if you could act as my girlfriend for a few days,"
Steve said.
So, this thing not true.
Sandra said, and then she burst into laughter.
"What?"
Steve asked in a confused tone.
Do people really hire girls to act as their girlfriends? I've been teasing a cruise, oh.
Sandra said.
"Well, it's real, and that's why we are here,"
Steve said.
Organo Veso, but I want to ask you one question,
Sandra said.
Why would someone like you need someone like me to act as your girlfriend? I beg by the supermarket entrance gates and you are a rich man,
she asked.
"That's why it's called business. You play your part and I will pay you what I'm supposed to,"
Steve said.
Okay, I understand. I would really love to take the job, but I don't have the kind of clothes that can match your standard,
Sandra said.
"You don't have to worry about that. Once you confirm that you would like to do the job, I will take you shopping and we will pick some clothes. Then I will pay you the first 1.5 million. And once the job is done, I will give you your balance,"
Steve said.
Just like that?
Sandra asked in shock. "Yes, just like that. But there are a few terms and conditions. After our contract is done, you must never speak to me again or even visit my home. I will call my lawyer to draft a contract and list the terms and conditions. If you try to contact me or even reach me, there will be dire consequences.
Steve said.
That one no be problem na. Shouldn't just to see your papa and act like I be your babe.
Sandra said.
Yes, just that and nothing more. Before we meet him, I will tell you what to say to him and how to answer his questions.
Steve said.
Alright, sir. I'm in.
Kai, thank you, Jesus. You don't wipe tears come out from my eyes just like that. Sandra soliloquized. Okay, I just texted my lawyer. He will draft a contract. So we will go shopping, and after we are done, I will send you the payment and you will give me your number. Is that okay? Steve asked.
Oga, so you mean everything you have been saying since?
Sandra asked.
Yes. Wait a minute. Are you not taking this seriously?
Steve asked in a stern voice.
I am. It's just that it seems like magic to me. I cannot believe that a random man I just met wants to pay me that amount of money to act as his girlfriend.
Sandra explained.
You speak so well. Why do you keep speaking in pidgin?
Steve asked.
Because I be street na. And for street, na pidgin everyone they speak.
Sandra answered.
Okay, when you're with my dad, I'd prefer that you speak more English, please.
Steve said.
That will not be wahala. I will do whatever you ask me as far as you pay me what you have promised.
Sandra said. Please give me your account number so you know that I'm not joking. Steve said. And Sandra did. I just sent you the 1.5 million naira. He added.
Ha! Is this real?
Sandra screamed excitedly.
Jesus Christ!
She added. Sandra could not believe the amount of money she had received when she looked at her phone screen.
Steve, I will do whatever you want me to do for you. Even if you want me to learn and speak Chinese, I will.
Sandra said.
Don't worry. English is fine. Now, let's go shopping.
Steve said as he turned on his car and drove off. Later that evening, after Steve took Sandra shopping at a very expensive boutique, he drove her to her house because he wanted to know where she lived.
Wait, do you actually live here?
Steve asked in shock when he saw the horrible state of the neighborhood Sandra lived in.
Yes, this is where I live. You know that rent in Lagos is very expensive, so this is where we can afford.
Sandra said.
This is unbelievable. I didn't know that places like this existed here.
Steve said.
Do you stay with your parents here?
He added.
Just my dad and siblings for now.
Sandra said.
What about your mom?
Steve asked.
She's no longer with us.
Sandra answered coldly.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have asked.
Steve apologized.
So, like we agreed, I will be here to pick you up tomorrow afternoon. Please do not disappoint me. I have done my part, and I expect you to do yours too.
He added.
Relax. You can trust me. I know fit scam you. My papa raised me well. I will be waiting for you tomorrow.
Sandra said as she stepped out of the car with her shopping bags, and Steve watched as she walked into the ghetto-like one-bedroom she shared with her family members. After scanning Sandra's neighborhood for some minutes, he drove back to his house and prepared himself for the next day. The following day, around 4 p.m., Steve drove to Sandra's house, and when Sandra came out wearing one of the beautiful dresses he had bought her, Steve almost did not recognize her.
For a second, I thought you were someone else.
Steve said.
Wow,
he added as Sandra entered his car.
So, let's do this. Did you tell your dad you were bringing someone home?
Sandra asked.
No, actually, I want to surprise him. So, if he asks you about us, tell him that we have been dating for almost a year and that I wanted our relationship to remain a secret until we were both ready.
Steve said.
Is that all?
Sandra asked.
Yes, that should do. And also, please do not mention what you do for a living. You can tell him you work in a bank or have a business. Just tell him anything to show that you are an independent woman,
Steve said.
Okay, I think I can do that,
Sandra said.
May I ask how many days I'll be staying at your house?
She added.
Oh, about that. You will be staying for the weekend. I have made all the arrangements, so there is nothing to worry about. Before I forget, please sign this,
Steve said as he handed the contract to Sandra.
Signed! I look forward to having a good weekend then.
Sandra said with a broad smile as she gave back the signed contract to Steve.
Me too,
Steve said, and they drove off. Throughout the drive to Steve's house, Steve did not talk to Sandra, but Sandra did not mind because she knew they were on a contract. Upon driving into Steve's compound, Sandra was shocked to see the beautiful, well-decorated mansion Steve lived in.
Is your father the governor of Lagos?
Sandra asked absent-mindedly as she continued to admire Steve's house.
No, he's just a regular businessman,
Steve said.
Remember everything I told you. Any minute from now, you will be meeting him,
Steve said before they both exited the car.
Good evening, Dad. I want you to meet the woman of my dreams,
Steve said to his father as soon as he entered the living room with Sandra. His father, Mr. Okoro, was drinking and watching TV in the living room when Steve walked in with Sandra.
Good evening, sir,
Sandra said as she knelt briefly to greet Steve's father.
Is this who I think she is?
Okoro said excitedly as he hugged Sandra.
My beautiful angel. What's your name?
Okoro asked Sandra.
My name is Sandra, sir,
Sandra answered shyly.
That's a very beautiful name. You are welcome to my house, my dear,
Okoro said.
Steve, this is quite a surprise. So you had this beautiful damsel the whole time, and you kept her from me, eh?
He added.
I told you, Dad. I told you I would introduce you to her when the time was right,
Steve said.
Come, my dear. Please, come and sit next to me,
Okoro said as he excitedly tapped the empty seat next to his, and Sandra sat beside him. The rest of that evening, Sandra and Okoro spent time talking, chatting and laughing. Even after they had dinner, Okoro could not stop talking to Sandra. Steve did not know that Okoro had always wanted a daughter, but because of his bad relationships with different women, Okoro refused to have another child with any woman. So, he badly wanted Steve to bring home a woman whom he could pour all of his love on. The first 2 days Sandra stayed with Steve and his father, she had so much fun with them. To follow their plan, Sandra even slept in Steve's room so Okoro would not doubt their relationship. On the third day, which was the last day Sandra was supposed to spend at Steve's place, something very shocking and unexpected happened. That afternoon, because Sandra was very bored and had nothing to do, she decided to go through Steve's large wardrobe just to feed her eyes on his expensive clothes, shoes, belts, jewelry, etc. While going through the wardrobe, Sandra discovered that one of Steve's shoe boxes contained some photos, and she couldn't help but look at them. While going through the pictures, Sandra saw something that sent shivers down her spine, and she screamed.
Sandra, what is it?
Steve asked as soon as he rushed into his room.
Did something happen? Why did she scream?
Okoro asked after dashing to Steve's room.
The woman in this picture! How did you know her?
Sandra said in a teary voice.
That's my mother. She left when I was young,
Steve said.
Do you know her too?
He added.
Yes, I do. In fact, I don't think I can ever forget her. This woman showed me pepper after she started dating my father years ago. My mom had just passed away and my dad married her, not knowing he was marrying a demon.
Sandra said in a teary voice.
Are you sure of what you are saying?
Okoro asked.
Yes, sir. I'm sure I can recognize Assa anywhere, even if it's in the land of the dead.
Sandra said.
Where is she now?
Steve asked.
I already told you. She's no longer with us. She left my dad when he fell sick and she abandoned my sisters with us.
Sandra said.
I thought your sisters were your biological sisters. Do you mean that my mom had other children with another man?
Steve asked.
No, they are just my half-sisters and I have been taking care of them and my sick father ever since she left my dad for another man.
Sandra said.
I don't even know what to say. What kind of coincidence is this?
Okoro said.
Why has Assa chosen to leave bitterness in every life she encounters?
He added.
So your half-sisters are also my half-sisters. This is quite a coincidence.
Steve said.
You know what? I want to be a part of their lives. And we can make that happen. Can I see them today?
He added.
Yes, you can.
Sandra said, while holding back her tears.
All right, let's go.
Steve said.
Dad, if you don't mind, can I bring them here?
Steve turned to Okoro.
Yes, they are your sisters, and I cannot stop you from meeting them. My only happiness is that Sandra isn't your sister,
Okoro said. After Steve and Sandra had got into the car, Steve could still not believe he was about to connect with his sisters, whom he had never known existed.
So what now? How do we handle this situation? My contract ends today and then this happened.
Sandra said in a teary voice.
About the contract. I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Is it possible for us to extend it to another year? Don't worry, I'll give you whatever amount you ask for,
Steve said.
Why the change of mind? You made me sign that I would never see you or speak to you again after today,
Sandra said.
I had a change of heart. And besides, I've never seen my dad so happy since after my mom left. It's almost like you brought out his inner child. And I will be honest, I enjoyed your company too,
Steve said.
But how do we handle this and our sisters?
Sandra asked.
Don't worry, just leave that to me,
Steve said. Unknown to Sandra, her life was about to change by merely agreeing to keep seeing Steve for the next 1 year. Truly, Steve took in his half-sisters and he took great care of them. But at the end of their 1-year contract, something else happened. Steve fell madly in love with Sandra, and in the end, he realized that not all women were after money. So he married her, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. Did you enjoy this story? Please tell us your favorite part in the comment section below. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Also, do not forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you.